Welcome to part 3 of this FaceGen tutorial where we're going to be continuing fixing those FaceGen textures. So if you haven't seen part 1 of the tutorial, go check out part 1 here, link is in the top right, where I show you how to use FaceGen and how to create these textures and all the options, the multitude of options that are in FaceGen that can help you to create some beautiful textures, beautiful face shapes as well from FaceGen. However, if you're concerned with those male textures, obviously male characters, some of them have beards, right, or facial hair, and when you create those textures, they don't look that good. How do we fix those? What are the options? Go check out part 2. So definitely go check out part 2 if you're working on male characters, you want to create your own male characters. Go check out that video as well, it's going to help you. However, in this part 3, we're going to be looking at this female texture that we created in part 1. We're going to be learning something new here as well, which is not covered in part 2, because since I created that tutorial in part 2, I've had new learnings, right? The always be learning philosophy demands that I always learning, right? I'm always learning something new. I'm always applying something. I'm always using that philosophy to guide me to get better. So that's the always be learning philosophy. I don't sit around thinking I know everything. I'm sitting around thinking, how can I get better? How can I improve? That is the question I'm always asking myself. The never-ending search for improvement, which is inevitably going to help me to achieve my goals. So having said that, let's jump into fixing this texture here. So even though we're going to be using similar things that we did in part 2, there's going to be some brand new learnings here, which I'm going to share with you as we go through this tutorial. So the first thing we want to fix here is this chin here. Look at this chin, this mark here. Not very good. This is the way the texture came out of FaceGen. Now, I'll explain later on why this looks like this, but I want to show you how we can fix it and the problems that arise with this, so you can see for yourself what happens, and then you can see, okay, this is why something happens. This is how to, these are the methodologies to fix this problem. This is Genesis 8 texture, by the way. We use the AI texture as the base, right? So this is the AI texture as the base to create this texture in FaceGen. So that's very, very important. Why? Because we have to use that face texture from the AI character to make the fixes. We can't use the default Genesis 8 face texture. We've got to use the one that we use inside FaceGen. Very, very important. So the first thing I'm going to do is come to the bottom right. I'm going to create my groups, remember. I'm just going to call it fix chin mark. So there's my folder. Remember why I'm creating folders? So I'm more organized, so I can see what I've done, right? 3 months, 6 months down the line, I come and open up this file. I'm like, how do I do this? And I'm like looking at this Photoshop file here, the layer stack here, and I can see exactly what I've done, right? Like this folder contains everything that fixes the chin mark. This folder contains everything that fixes the lips, the nose, the eyes, right? Whatever needs fixing, it's all in there, all concise, all organized. Now I can see exactly what I need to do the appropriate fixes for whatever I'm doing, right? So it's very, very important to have that organized structure when you're doing something for future reference. So what I need to do now is I'm going to go and get that AI face diffuse map here. So I'm going to go to my F drive where I have copied it to G8 base. There is AI, and all I need is the AI diffuse here. So let's just throw it in there. Click OK. Just tick that. Perfect. And now I'm going to drag that into that folder there. Now we're going to use a mask here, because remember, I don't want to use all of this. I just want to use a specific section of it. So I'm going to use my mask, Alt, and click on the mask button here. And then I'm just going to paint in. So what we're going to do before we paint in is I want to go to my brush tool here. I want to turn on symmetry because this is a symmetrical texture map. So I can turn on symmetry, vertical, like we did, exactly like we did in part 2. Now the reason why we're repeating this as well, because remember, repetition is the key to learning. You don't learn something doing it once. You have to do it multiple times to learn it. And once you've learned it, then you can start going into the nuances of that particular thing you're learning, right? You're learning like the basic skills, the kind of like basic workflow, and then you can start changing that workflow to whatever suits you. That's the most important thing. So remember, repetition is required in order to learn something. You never learn something once. You need to learn something by repeating it. So that's why we're repeating this again. So even though you might be thinking, oh, Palmy's just repeating what we did in part 2. Yes, you know why? Because repetition actually means you're going to learn it the second time around better, the third time around better, the 10th time, the 50th time, the 100th time, the 1000th time you do something, you get better at that thing. You start to learn the nuances, and that's the separate, right? That is the driver between the artists that you see that you like that are absolutely amazing. Why? Because it's repetition, right? They've learned the basics, the foundations. They've done it like 10,000 times and now they've moved on to another level. Why? Because repetition is key. So let me just turn my foreground color to white, which means I'm going to now paint that in there. I'm going to make sure I have the soft brush as well. I just need any soft round brush. And the opacity and flow don't matter this time, right? So we're just going to go and just literally paint it in. So as I'm doing this, you're probably thinking like, well, Palmy, that doesn't match the skin tone. Don't worry, we'll get to that. We will get to that. All right, so I've painted in the chin portion using the AI map, the face map here, the diffuse map here. Why? Because this is the map we use in the FaceGen tutorial. So part 1 went through that. So if you go through part 1 of this tutorial, you can see that I use the AI texture maps as the base to create these textures. So this is what it's based on. That's why we're using this particular map here. So we've done that there. The chin is kind of like okay, but however, the skin does not match. Now in part 2 of the tutorial, I used the hue saturation adjustment layer to fix the tone of the skin, right? To make it match as best as I could. However, that was probably not the best way. There's actually a better way. So as I was learning, as I was trying to, get better at what I'm trying to do here, I was looking for who can help me, right? So I'm looking like who can help me with Photoshop to match skin tones. Now there's many YouTube channels regarding Photoshop. There's a lot of excellent ones that will teach you something in different ways to do things. However, my go-to kind of like Photoshop guru, so to speak, is Piximperfect. You may have heard of him. Umesh, my brother from another mother. He was the one that actually helped me a lot all the way back in 2019, 2020 when I was learning Photoshop, when I knew that, or rather when I learned that post work is very, very important when you're creating your artwork. Doing all that great stuff in Daz Studio is only so much. You've got to do the next level of it, which is post work, which is to use Photoshop or any kind of photo editing software to really make your renders pop. So it's a key part of your workflow. So that's when Umesh, again, I learned from him. He taught me brand new things and I was like, why didn't I think of this earlier? I didn't know this, and now I do, and now I can apply this, and now I can share this knowledge with anybody who wants to learn from me. In order to match skin tone, like really the basic levels of skin tone, is you've got the color of the skin, right? It's got color of the skin, and then you've got the brightness, the tone of the skin, right? The brightness of the skin. So that got me thinking, what are the things inside Photoshop that allow me to have control of the brightness of the skin and the color of the skin? So if I go to my adjustment layers here in Photoshop, hue saturation allows me to change the color of the skin, right? So I can use the hue here and the saturation to control the color of the skin. Cool. I can use a lightness as well, but that didn't give me enough control. There wasn't enough control there. I didn't like that. So I was thinking to myself, what gives me more control in terms of the lightness? So I can control like the brightness of the skin, right? Whether it's the kind of like the brightness of the skin, yes. After experimenting, I found that when I go to adjustments and I go to levels here, that gives me a lot more control in the lightness. So let me show you what I mean by this. So let me put this hue saturation layer above levels layer here. Let me use a clipping mask here for both of these adjustment layers. And what that clipping mask means is the hue saturation and the levels adjustment layers will only affect this layer underneath, right? It won't go here. It'll just affect the one below it. That's all it is. So let's do the hue saturation first. Let's do the saturation here for that. Let's kind of fix the skin tone a bit. So that's too much. We want it very subtle, right? Something like that. That's pretty good, right? You can just about barely see what's happening here. So when I go to the levels now, however, it gives me a greater control, right? See this, like, okay, that's to the extreme, but you can see I have a lot more control with the brightness and the dark. I can really, get this skin level, this skin tone, match it a lot more better. I had a lot more control now. So you can see I can go through the midpoints here and everything. And it just gives me a lot more control here, which is fantastic, right? And a lot more easier than what I was doing in part 2. So these are new learnings. So thank you, Umesh from Piximperfect. Definitely go subscribe to that guy, right? He's got some amazing knowledge there. And if you want to become better at Photoshop, or just general, right? In your general thinking in terms of how you can use post work to make your artwork better, go learn from him because he's got amazing knowledge. That's what I always look for, right? I always look for who. I don't look for how I can do something. I look for who can help me. That's my number one goal, and I'm looking for who. So if I have a problem, something I'm stuck with, I don't say how can I do it, I say who can help me. And then that narrows it down in terms of who you are looking for, in terms of who can help you. That's what the goal is. It's never like how can you do something. You want to know who can help you, because they're going to have a lot more knowledge to achieve your goals. So here's the levels. One thing I have forgot though, let me go back here to the layer mask here. I need to do the feathering, right? So I forgot about that. So let's bring that. So it kind of, basically the point of feathering is to kind of like mask it in terms of making that transition soft between the hard edges, so it's not too hard, so it looks like it belongs. That's what it is. We're blending it in. It's all about skin blending. Now, is it going to be perfect blending? No. You could spend hours on this. I'm not going to spend hours on this. You don't want a tutorial on me trying to get this perfect skin texture. We're just going to do the best we can. So that looks pretty good. I am happy with that. So I can probably go to levels and make that a bit more brighter there. The midpoints here, something like that. If you really want to be specific about that, maybe with this area here. I'm getting a bit picky here. There we go. So here is the before. Here is the after. Here is the before. Here is the after. Now, if I showed you this as it was like this, you'll be like, where's the fix? This looks okay. There's nothing wrong with this. And that's what I want to show you. Look, it's very simple change here. We've done that now, the fixed chin, we've done that using our new learnings here, right? Even that 1%, right? Small difference, using levels instead of using the brightness, the lightness here, the lightness dial here, the slider here, whatever you want to call it, to change that. I found levels gives me a lot more control, and that's what I want. The more control you have with something, the more you can blend that skin tone in. So I'm happy with that. That's great. So the next thing we need to do is fix the lips here. So I'm going to just right click and duplicate this group. Let's give it a name. Just going to call it fix lips. That's all we're going to call it. And I just need to delete this layer mask and then add it again. Okay, let's zoom in here to show you what I mean again. So I'm going to zoom in here, and basically I want to fix these edges of the lips here. They're too sharp. They shouldn't be like this. So let's fix that. So again, got my symmetry on, and then I'm just going to go and just go over this here. So this is good enough. Doesn't have to be perfect, right? And that's okay. Again, we're going to use feathering here. So let me just feather in the edges here so it looks like it blends in nicely. Something like that is good enough. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to say it again. I'm always going to say that because there's a lot of big misconceptions with being perfect and, oh, everything needs to be perfect. And it's like, no, it actually needs to be good enough. Does it look good enough to you? If it does, great, right? You're the artist. You make that decision. Leonardo da Vinci had to make that decision. All the great artists, Pablo Picasso, all the great artists that you can think of way before I was born, you were born, right? Made that decision and said, you know what? That's good enough. Let me move on to the next thing, right? They didn't spend ages with a particular piece of artwork, spending like years over it. They were like, you know what? That's good enough. I'm going to move on to the next, because the only way to get better is to move on to the next thing. That looks okay. I'm going to actually turn the feathering down a bit there. There we go. In terms of the skin tone here, I think that's a pretty good match. We could play around with the levels. We could experiment rather and say like, well, actually that could be a bit lighter, darker. Let's have a look. Just wanting to blend in as natural as possible. So I think that's good enough. That is good enough. Let's go to fit screen here. Yeah, that's good enough there. So let's say, for example, if I turned it off, turned it back on, you probably would not even know the difference. Now it probably does need to be a bit darker, let's be honest here. So let's just turn up the saturation here. Let's dial down the levels here. I think that's good enough. Yeah, I'm happy with that. That's good enough. We can always come back and fix that if we need to. So that's good enough. Happy with that. Now let's fix the nose here. So again, I'm going to right click on the fix lips here. Group, duplicate that group again, and then I'm just going to call it fixed nose. You may have noticed that my workflow is slightly different. So I believe in part 2 I kind of was jumping all over the place, so I believe I started with the hair in part 2, or the facial hair, then I moved to the eyes and everything. It wasn't very structured, so I'm working from the bottom up. So in this case, we're doing the chin, then we're going to do the lips, now we're going to do the nose, after that we're going to do the eyelids, and the eyebrows don't really need doing, but I can go through that as well, and then we're going to fix this section here as well that shouldn't exist there. So again, we're having a better workflow, learning from my previous method, trying to improve, trying to get better, thinking that's a little bit differently, right? So just a little bit of methodology there in terms of working my workflow, thinking like, how can I improve this workflow? It's not perfect, never going to be perfect, but can it be better? Yes, it can. This is how it can be better. So let's delete that layer mask. Again, yes, I'm repeating what I did in part 2, but remember, repetition is the key to learn anything. You never learn anything once, you've got to do it several times. So I want to fix this section here, so I'm just going to go over it here. And the nose here, I don't like this here as well, and this here I don't like, so we're going to just add that there, fix that section there. Right, so let's fix the skin tone for this as well. So let's start off with the levels here. Let's go through and blend it in as best as we can. That's pretty decent. Yeah, that's good enough. Let's have a look if we zoom back out. That's not too bad. One thing I have forgotten again, if you were paying attention, is the feathering. I forgot the feathering. So, just goes to show I'm not perfect, right? Even I forget things. I'm recording this tutorial right now, and even though I have my notes in front of me, I still forget things. Even though I've gone through this tutorial several times, like practicing it, even I forget things. So that does happen, folks. That is good enough. So if you had a look like this, if I showed you this FaceGen tutorial like this, or rather showed you this texture as it was, you'll be like, what's wrong with this texture, Palmy? There's nothing wrong with this because of all the blending I've done. So that is good enough. Maybe that needs to be toned down. I believe that saturation is probably too high. Yeah, something like that, just to kind of match this part of the nose here. I mean, ideally you should fix this as well, but it's good enough, you know, it really is. So let's go and duplicate that fix nose group there, and we're going to call this fix eyes. So let's go fix the eyes. Now with the eyes, obviously, because it's a female texture, they're going to have eyelashes, right? Because obviously females, they like to use, is it mascara? I don't know, right? To make their eyes bigger, right? Their eyelashes bigger, so they make it thicker or whatever. We need to fix all this area here as well, and everything here. We need to blend that in, so that's very crucial. So let's do that as well. Again, right click, delete this layer mask. Add it again, and let's start painting in that area. I'm going to zoom in for this one here a bit. There we go. So let's go and fix this right now. So we need to remove all this kind of eyelashes here, this kind of like section here, because we don't want that on our texture. We do not want this on the texture. It will look very strange. It will look very strange indeed. So let's just go and do this as best as we can. Well, probably that section, I don't want that there as well. I think that's okay. So let's do the feathering. Something like that is probably good enough. Let's have a look. Zoom out. Okay, that side needs to be worked on as well. So paint this section here and paint this section here as well. That's good enough. Right, so let's have a look at the skin tone. That's pretty decent skin match actually. Still don't like this section here. Let's match the skin tone now. So I'm going to make the eyes a little bit darker. Something like that is okay. Let's have a look at the hue saturation. How much skin tone is that? Is that too much? That's not a bad match actually, apart from this here. So I'm actually going to leave that as it is. But we could technically go and remove all that and probably turn up the feathering a lot more. Where it's something like that is probably better. That probably looks a bit better. So always experiment with the feathering. Always experiment with the levels here in terms of the brightness of the skin tone and then the actual color of the skin tone to get it how you want it. So you can always come back to this in terms of making it better. So with the eyebrows, we don't really have to do much here, but we can thicken them if you want to. So I can duplicate, we can actually not duplicate it. We're not going to use any of this. All we're going to do is create a new folder, a new group rather, and then we're just going to call it, we can call it Thicken Eyebrows. And then I want to create a new layer, and then I'm going to use, we'll use brush 7 from the hair brushes that we found out in part 2. So I'm going to use those brushes. So let's go all the way down here. The Biscuits particle brushes. So I'm going to use number 7 here. So I hope you've checked that out. Hope you supported that person as well. Biscuits 3D, I believe it was. So let's go and do this. So in terms of the color as well of this, the eyebrows, what I'm going to use the dropper tool here. I'm just click on a section here and just get rough color so it matches it. That's good enough. And then we're going to just use that color and then we're going to paint it. In terms of the flow as well, I want to probably turn that down to something like 40% for this. And then I'm just going to click my button and then we're just going to go and paint away. Keep doing that, just going through. Right, it doesn't look like much here, but when we zoom out I'll show you the difference. So here's the before, here's the after, here's the before, and there is the after. Very subtle, okay, very subtle. That's the great marksman of any post work, is it's very subtle. You know it's there, but you don't know what it is, and it's very subtle, right? It's just, you know it's there, you know someone's done something, but you don't know quite what they've done, and that's the kind of like magic. So this is optional, right? You don't have to thicken the eyebrows if you don't want to. So in this case, I'm going to do it. And then we need to fix this top section here where the eyes are. That shouldn't be like that. So I'm going to duplicate the fix eyes group because we're going to use the same hue, saturation, and levels layer. So let's go duplicate that group. And I'm just going to call it fix other because I don't know what that section is. I still have no idea what that is. I haven't read the comments from part 2 yet, so I don't know. So if you have put that in the comments for part 2, I do apologize. I will check that out. But if you know what this is at the top here, this part of the texture here, what it is, I have no idea what it is. But if you know what it is, put it down in the comments, right? Share your knowledge. So for this section here, we are just going to turn the flow back to 100, of course, and then we're just going to go to the soft brush again, so it's that one there, and we're just going to paint over it. That shouldn't look like that whatsoever, and I don't want to touch the texture below. Let's go to this side as well. Even though it's symmetrical, sometimes one side of the texture is more harsh than the other. So you might have to work on both sides, but even though it's symmetrical, that's not, even though we've got the symmetry on here, it doesn't always fix what's on the left and the right, so, or what's on the right and the left. So you may have to jump to one side or the other to make the appropriate fix. And then we just need to change the color. It needs to be more brighter, I believe. So I need to just change the brightness to kind of like match this. So let's just do that. I think it needs to be something like this, I believe. Let's have a look at the original. Let's turn down the saturation as well. I think that needs to be, that's what it needs to be, less saturated. So something like 6, 7, 8 is fine. Okay, there it is, right? That is our texture done for now. Fantastic, really happy with that. So let us save this. So I'm just gonna go to File, Save As, and it's in the same folder that the original textures are for FaceGen, where I asked them to be saved. And I'm just going to call this YS3 face. That's fine. Save it as that. And then I need to save it as a actual texture file. So let me go and save it as a JPEG. And we've got the original textures here that came out from FaceGen. And I'm going to call it YS3 face 1. Actually, we'll call it YS3 face underscore base map 1, BM1. And click OK. So that's done. That's fantastic. Now let's move on to fixing the eyes. So let's go jump into that. So here we are with our Genesis 8 female eye texture. Again, this looks very familiar to the eye texture we had in part 2 for the Genesis 8 male character. However, there is one significant difference, and that is the pupils are way off, right? They should be more or less in the middle. They're way off here. They should be in the middle here. If you've watched part 2 of the tutorial, you'll notice that Jason Statham's eye pupils, his pupils were more or less in the middle. We didn't have to touch that, which is great. However, in this case, we need to fix that, right? The pupils should be in the middle here. In this case, they're not. Now you could go to FaceGen and move that particular marker, that pointer for the pupil on the photo and try to match it. That's a waste of time in my opinion. Why? Because we can fix it in post-work, which is a lot more efficient. Also, the method I use here is far superior, I believe, to what I did in part 2 to fix the eyes. It looks amazing. When I take these eyes, this eye map that we're going to be fixing into Daz Studio, and you see how it looks, you're going to be like, wow, this is amazing. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing in this portion of the tutorial. So we can use the Genesis 8 female eye texture for this portion of the tutorial. We can certainly do that. We're not going to, even though they are interchangeable with the Genesis 8 male. So you can use either because the eyes, believe it or not, are actually the same. So you can use the same texture. What we're going to be using again is the AI eye texture. So that's what I'm going to insert here. We're going to use that as our base. The base texture we use to create these FaceGen textures was the AI character textures. So that's what we're going to be using. So I'm going to go to my folder here and you can see all the eyes here for this AI character. Now it doesn't necessarily matter which ones you use, right? You can use any one of these. It doesn't matter. Even though I know that our character's eyes in this case are blue, I could use this one here, the blue one. I could certainly use that one. I'm not going to use that one on purpose because I'm going to show you that it doesn't matter, right? So I'm going to use G8 Eyes 1. Now let's just drag that in there. Click OK and click the tick here, right? So as you can see, the inside here is brown. Like I said, it doesn't matter. I'm going to prove to you it doesn't matter. You just pick the Genesis 8 eye texture that you like. It could be any eye texture, right? Genesis 8 female eye texture you want to use. You can even use this for a male one if you want to. You just follow the same kind of like underlying method here and your eye textures will look amazing. So the first thing I want to do with the ones I've just imported, the AI eyes texture, is drag it down here to below our FaceGen texture, and then I'm going to use a mask. Rather, I want to use a inverted mask, so Alt and click on the mask there. And then I just want to paint this particular part in. Again, we're going to use symmetry here because it is symmetrical, vertical. Tick that as well. And then we're going to use our soft brush and everything else, 100% opacity, 100% flow, that's fine. And then we're just going to paint it in. So let's paint it in. Now, as I'm painting this in, I just want to be very mindful of the edges here. So I just want to do my best to paint in this section here. So let's go do that. Going to be very mindful as I go around the edges here. So I'm not concerned about anything at the moment. It doesn't matter what we are painting in from our FaceGen texture here. I just want it to be put in here. So that'll do nicely. So I can go smaller brush size here just to get the edges here. I want to make sure that I just, you know, it is good enough, right? It doesn't have to be like perfect. Like there's a bit of a section here that I don't like, so I can just sort that out there. Cool. That is good. Right. I am happy with that. That's fine. That's fine. So something like that. That's what you want to do. The first thing you want to do is kind of use a mask here and paint in those particular sections here. Keeping the outside here brown, right? You want to keep that kind of like brown line here. We don't need to touch the inside. That is a pupil. That's going to be black. That's already done for us because everyone's pupil, as far as I know, is black. And this section here, white, we can leave that as is. That needs to be, that's fine, right? We're just concerned with this outside here, this kind of outside circle here, basically. Right, now I'm going to create a group here. I'm going to call it right eye fix. We're going to focus on fixing just one eye. I believe in the other tutorial part 2, I believe I was trying to fix both, and that was not right because our eyes are symmetrical. So most of the time, there's not much asymmetry in eyes in terms of the way they look. Very rare, but it does happen, but most of the time it isn't. So we're just going to focus on fixing this portion of the eye, and then we're just going to move that across to the left eye basically at the end. So that's what we're going to be doing here. That's why I've created this folder here, or this group rather. Right, so what I need to do now is click on the layer here, where we've done the masking. I'm going to do my stamp layer. So Control, Shift, Alt and E, I believe, creates the stamp. And then I'm going to put that into the right fix folder here. So now this is in the folder, as you can see. There you go. And we're going to use this as like our base. So what I want to do, I'm looking at this texture again, and because we're going to work on the right side, we need to fix this here. So the first thing I want to do is get this and drag it across here, and then I'm just going to paint this section here. So this section here, I'm going to move it across here and paint it. So let's do that, Control and T, so I can translate and move this, and then drag it across. Because it's symmetrical, remember, it's okay, it's going to be exactly the same, so we don't have an issue with any asymmetry or anything like that. It's going to snap into place. That snapped into place. I haven't done anything. So basically we're halfway through in terms of the image. And then I'm going to use my inverted mask here, and then we're just going to paint in that section there. So again, we're going to paint it in. See? Now, I assure you, this looks horrible as it is right now. I will attest to that. This looks like really bad. But when we take this into Daz Studio, you'll be pleasantly surprised. You will be pleasantly surprised. You'll be like, wow, I didn't know that you don't have to be like a master creator of all these textures for eyes. You don't need to be a master creator. I mean, you could, of course, you can become amazing. Of course, there's always that. If you want to, that's not a problem. You want to master a skill, that's fantastic. Admirable quality. But do we just want to be good enough? Yes, we do. In this case, we want to be good enough. We're just starting, right? We're not trying to make it perfect. So that's okay. Oh, you know what I did? I didn't turn off symmetry. Okay, so that's a mistake of mine. So I should have turned off symmetry before I did this. So let me go and turn off symmetry now. We should be okay with that, because we just copied that. I didn't turn off symmetry. So turn off symmetry because we were working on the right hand side here. So that was a mistake I made. So what I will do now, that's fine. I'm okay making mistakes, not the end of the world. Let's just take that off. Although it doesn't really matter too much. So I'm just trying to undo what I did here on the left hand side. I didn't really want to touch the left side at all. Okay, now we need to do the feathering to kind of blend it in. So it doesn't have to be amazing. So anything like that, it's pretty good. As long as the edges are soft, that's fine. Cool, that's good. Let's do our stamp layer again. Brilliant. So now, again, the right eye, we're still fixing this. I'm going to take this portion of this eye, I'm going to rotate it anti-clockwise 90 degrees, and then we are going to use that to fix this portion here as well. So let's do that with this. Control T. I'm going to keep shift pressed here. In the top right corner, you can see my arrow change into this kind of like angular section. I'm going to just rotate it around minus 90 degrees. There we go. There it is. Tick that, and then we're going to use our inverted mask here, and then we're just going to paint it in. So let's paint in this section here. Paint that as well. Get rid of this eye as well. There we go. Let's feather that in. So feather it in. Too much. That's okay. Probably need to fix this as well, actually. That should be all white. Cool. Stamp layer, Control, Shift, Alt and E. There's my stamp layer now. So now we need to fix the bottom here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rotate it minus 180 degrees. So all the way around. And then I'm going to drag this all the way to the bottom. It's going to automatically snap into place for me because it's symmetrical. Cool. Tick that. And then we're going to use our inverted mask. And then we're just going to fix this issues here. So let's go and fix this here. Right, looking a lot better than it did before. And then we just use feathering to just feather it in, blend it in. Right, we're just trying to blend that in. Cool. And then we do our stamp layer, Control, Alt, Shift, and E. And now all we need to do now is press Control and T, and then just move this across. Click on the tick here, inverted mask, and now we just paint this in. We just literally just paint this in. We're just copying what was on the left and putting it on the right. So we're just painting in everything here. So it looks like whatever was on the right is now on the left. So you can see this method is far superior in terms of what I was doing in part 2. Part 2 is a lot of rotating and moving this. I feel like this is a lot more efficient. So technically we can move this one out and give it a group name and call it left fix. Oops, didn't want to do that. I wanted to move that in there. There we go. So we can see exactly, for future reference, I can see what I did. So even though I've got my notes in front of me here, I can see what I did for the left. So this, as soon as I turn this off, the left fix, that's there. And I turn this off, you can see what we did to the right here. So that's our eyes done. Let's save this. File, save as. Save the Photoshop file first, and then we will save it as our texture. So as a JPEG, Y3 eyes, and we'll just call it, BM1 again, base map 1. Okay. So we've completed the fixes here for the Genesis 8 female face texture that came out of FaceGen and the eye texture that came out of FaceGen. We've done that, fantastic. Now let's jump into fixing the Genesis 9 female FaceGen texture that came out of FaceGen. So let's jump into that as well. Again, it's a very similar method, or rather we're using a brand new method that we used for the Genesis 8 female face fix. So we're going to be doing that. I'm going to fast forward that. You don't need to see me do that again. However, I will stop at the end and go through the layer stack again and show exactly what I did, clicking on everything just to show you what I've done. That it's a very similar method. And after we've done that, we're going to jump into Daz Studio and apply those textures and show you a possible problem you would have with this particular texture that we've created from FaceGen for Genesis 8 female, and how to go and fix this problem. So that's something very interesting to look forward to as we go through this tutorial. Okay, so let's go through this Photoshop fix here for Genesis 9 texture. So the first thing we did was put our Genesis 9 female texture that came out of FaceGen as the bottom layer. Then we created a group called Fix Chin Mark rather. So let me just apply that group there, turn it on. And what we did here at the bottom is we have the map here for Olympia. Now, why have I used the Olympia map? Because this is the texture we based our Genesis 9 female from. So in part 1 of the tutorial, we went through and we used the Olympia 9 texture map as our base texture. So that's why we're using this. Then I've done the mask here, and then I masked in that section here where we had the chin issue. Then I've used the levels adjustment here, the mask, sorry, let's go back to the mask here, and then we use feathering here to blend that in. Then we went to our levels here, adjusted the brightness to match as best as we can, blend that skin tone in, and then the hue saturation as well. Add a bit of saturation color to that just to blend that in so that looks good. So there's the before There's the after, there's the before, and there's the after. As you can see here, if you just looked at this texture as it was, you would not be able to tell the difference before. Next one we did is we created another group, fix the lips. So let's zoom into the lips. So currently, as you can see with the lips here, we have these sharp edges here. We don't want that. So again, we turn that on. You can see the difference. So we've used the same texture here, Olympia 9, and then I'm going to use the same method here. Paint that in with a soft brush, so just like we did with the chin fix there for the mark on the chin. Use a bit of feathering to blend that in nicely, and then use the levels here and this hue saturation to fix that. By the way, these files here, all these textures, all these Photoshop files will be available for you to download. So I'm gonna put a link in the description down below. You can go ahead and download and use those, and the morphs as well. So the morphs for YS3, I'm gonna put that as well. That came from FaceGen, so you can insert that into your Daz Studio. Use it as a morph if you want to. You can certainly do that. So I'm gonna put that link in the description down below, so you can check that as well. So that's the lips fixed there. Then let's go to the nose here. So let me just zoom up to the nose. So that's what the nose looked like before here. Bit of a mess. So let's turn it on. Looks a lot more better now. So same thing, use the mask here, paint in the Olympia 9 that we liked of that texture, the nose here, and then we just, I didn't do no feathering for that, so let me fix that right now. Didn't do no feathering, that's not good. So let's do a bit of feathering there. I thought I did. Just blend that in nicely, there we go. So a bit of feathering added there. Again, made a mistake, that's fine, not the end of the world. Let's fix it, right? Not a problem. And then we use the levels here, and we use the hue saturation to blend that in. Let's go to the eyes now. So fix the eyelids. Let's go and have a look at the one on the left here. And let's turn that on. So again, Olympia 9, we use the mask here, paint in that section of the Olympia 9 that we like, the texture here for the eyes. Feather it, so we use a bit of feathering to blend it in nicely. And then we've got the levels here to kind of match the colors with the eyelids. So it doesn't have to be perfect with the eyelids as well, with the matching of the color of the eyelids. Some people's eyelids are actually darker, so that's the way some people's eyelids are. The skin tone is not always bright white, right? Some of them are darker. So people that put on like makeup as well, so it's going to be darker anyway. So I wouldn't be too concerned with matching the eyes perfectly in terms of skin tone. You want it to be near enough, so in terms of blending in with the original skin tone here, more or less, right? You don't want it to be too obscure with the colors. You want it to be like, for example, if you look at this eyes here, if you look at these eyelids here, you'll be like, yeah, these actually do match with that, because some people do have slightly darker tone in terms of their eyes, right, the eyelids, and some people have lighter. So as long as it matches, that is fine. So that's the eyelids there. Then we fix the other. So let's go up here, which I still don't know what that is. So if you know what this is, this portion of the Genesis 9 texture, I believe it's the tongue. So we're going to fix that as well. So again, same with the Olympia texture, we're going to paint in that section. I didn't use feathering for that as well. So let's fix that as well. Let's put the feathering on that. Just get that right. That's about right. 7 is good enough. 6.87 is fine. And then we use the levels here, and we use the hue saturation to kind of get the nearest color we can to that. Doesn't have to be perfect. I could probably, hue saturation is very, very bright there. Probably could bring that down a bit. 48, and then we can experiment with the levels and be like, you know what, that's too much or that's too less. Probably need to work on the midpoint one here actually. That's better blending, that is. There you go. So that's nice as well. And then this is optional as well, thicken the eyebrows. So I use brush 1 this time from the Biscuits particle brush. So I use brush 1. Let's try brush 1, see how that looks. So here, that's the before. Here's the after. That's the before. Here's the after. Like very subtle, right? It's so subtle you probably wouldn't notice it. But I just thought, hey, why not? So the eyebrows you can thicken. You don't have to if you don't want to. Now the reason why we have the eyebrows here is because we're going to be using the eyebrows for our Genesis 9 character. We're going to use the eyebrows that come on the textures. I know that for Genesis 9 textures, there are no eyebrows. They want you to use the fiber cards that come with Genesis 9 for the Genesis 9 characters. But if you want to use the eyebrows for your characters, you can do that, right? So you can use the eyebrows. If you don't want to use the fiber card, that's up to you. So that's just something you can experiment with. So that's all done. Our changes there. And all we need to do now is save it. I don't believe I saved these, so let me go and save this. I didn't save it. Okay. File, save as, and let's go to JPEG, and we will save it as head underscore BM1. So that is done, right? So with the great thing again with Genesis 9 is we don't have to worry about the eyes because the eye textures look absolutely amazing. I can show you that right now. So let's go back to our textures here. Genesis 9, YS3 we're going to be using. So there's the eyes here. So what you'll notice with the eyes is they're not blue, because for this character here that we based it on, their eyes and their photos are blue. So what we're going to be doing for this one is we're going to be going to our YS3 eye ray, which is the eye ray adjusted textures that come out of FaceGen. So I did both to show you the difference. So if you don't know what the difference is with that, go check out part 1. A lot of that is explained in part 1 of the tutorial. Definitely go check that out. And we're going to be using these eyes here for our Genesis 9 character because the eyes are blue here, because the eye ray adjusted seems to get the right eye color, whereas when you don't use the eye ray adjusted, you get a different eye color for whatever reason. I don't know why. I think that could be a fault with the program, but that's what we're going to be using anyway. We're going to be using the non-eye ray adjusted textures here because I feel they're a lot more closer to skin tone. So now let's jump into Daz Studio. Let's apply these textures that we spent a lot of time fixing for Genesis 8 female and Genesis 9. Let's go do that right now. Okay, we're back inside Daz Studio now, and we're going to apply our YS3 morph, head morph, and we're going to apply the texture fixes that we did previously in this tutorial. So in my seed tab here, I've got my Genesis 8 female character. I'm going to click on that to activate it. We're going to go to the shaping tab here. Just wait for that to load. Then we're going to scroll down where it says head here. Expand on that. Going to go to FaceGen here, and you'll see a whole host of morphs here that I've created or was practicing with. So scrolling down here, we want to find YS3. There it is. And then I'm going to activate this morph. So I'm going to turn it on, and you realize when you get to 100%, the morph is very exaggerated. So that's one of the issues I would say with FaceGen is when you put it at 100%, the morph is very exaggerated. So I would dial this back down to something more appropriate. So with this one here, because the morph is so exaggerated, I feel like 100% is way too much. Even if I go to something like 80-85%, it still feels like too much. So I might just end up going to something like 70 something. So maybe 80% here, 79.4. So that's our morph activated there. Now we need to resolve the skin textures. So because we use the AI skin of that character, I'm going to apply those skin textures first. So I'm going to go to my smart content tab here. Going to expand default. Going to go to materials, expand that. Expand eye ray here. And we're going to go to feminine. And then there's AI HD there. So this is everything to do with that character. The reason why we're doing this is because remember our textures that we base everything on was on this character AI. It wasn't the base Genesis textures, it was the AI character. So I'm going to apply that. So making sure that obviously my Genesis 8 character is selected before I double click this AI format here. So double click that. So there you go. Everything has changed now. The textures are on. If I just do a very quick preview here, you can see that the textures here of this character, including the eyes, the default settings are on there. So there you go. So let's apply our maps that we created from FaceGen, our texture maps. So I'm going to click on surfaces here, and we're going to expand Genesis 8 female here. We're going to click on surfaces, and let's do the face first. So we want to select ears, keep control pressed. We want to select eye socket. We want to select face. And we want to select lips here. So all we need to do now for the base color, we need to change the map here. So I need to click on the base color here, go to browse, and I need to go to my F drive because that is where everything is saved. So my runtime folder, my textures folder, FaceGen, Genesis 8 female, YS3 is the one we're looking at. And we want to choose the face. So we did save the face here. There it is, YS3 face BM1. And then again, I just want to do it for the translucency as well. So that's wherever this texture is, I need to do it for this one as well. So go there, and this one we can just click over here, Y3 face, because it's already in the list. That saved me time. Fantastic. And the other one I'm going to do now is the torso very quickly. So click over here on the texture here, and instead of going to browse, if I go to browse, I'll need to go through all the files and find everything again. I can just go to the file that I just added with this one here. Even though it's not the correct file, it would take me to the location. So I'm gonna click on there. It's obviously not the correct file. Then I can click back on here, go to browse, and it would directly take me to that folder now. So saving myself some time there. Let's add the torso there. And let's do the same for the translucency, because it's using the same map there. And we're gonna do a quick preview. Now, I haven't put the arms and the legs textures or the eyes yet, because I want to show you a issue with this. So let's go and have a look at this right now. Just going to let that render for a bit, and you'll notice something very apparent here. So you'll still notice there's an issue here, as you can see from the line here. Even though we've gone through the fixing of the FaceGen texture, we still have this issue here. Now the reason is because if we have a look at the texture, you can see that the head texture here where it overlaps with the torso texture. So you can see where everything overlaps. Let me go to the surfaces, that'll be a better view here. So here we can see right where the overlaps. So we're clicking on the torso, you can see where it overlaps. If I go to the face, you'll see it better, I think, where it overlaps here, where the seam is here. So the problem is we have this issue here. It's still here, right? In terms of our fix the face texture, it's not a great fix. Now it's doable from the front. If you got a front view like this and you're far away, it looks absolutely fine, right? There's nothing wrong with it. But when you zoom in here, you can see there's an issue here. The fix that we did with the FaceGen texture earlier on in the tutorial, I'm going to show you why this looks like this, even though we did that fix. So let me go and open up FaceGen and show you the problem and why we won't be able to fix it with the previous method. We're going to have to use a different method. All right, here we are in FaceGen here. This is our character that we created using the FaceGen here. As I rotate it, you will see an issue here. This is the issue here. So this is the problem why we've got this issue here. So even if I try to blend it in as best as I could, there's no way to do it because this artifact here is just too much, right? It's right at the edge of the texture here, and that's going to cause a problem. So that's one of the issues. Now, one of the methods you can do to fix this is obviously go through FaceGen again, load an image of this character again, and then load the profile photos as well, and then go through and see if you can find a better image. So sometimes you might find a better image of this character. The one that I used probably wasn't that good in terms of the frontal and the sides here in order to remove that. So that's one method you can do that. It is a longer method, so certainly you can go and do that. Find a better image if you can. If you can't, then if you can't find a better image, then I'm going to show you a second method on how to resolve this issue here, and we're going to go through that second method right now. So we're back in Photoshop here with the FaceGen texture for Genesis 8 female that we fixed very early on in the tutorial, and I'm going to show you how to fix that problem with the FaceGen texture, right? Because it's so close, that artifact here, the chin problem, it's so close to the edge of this texture here that even though it doesn't look like a problem here, we still need to resolve it. I don't like that, right? I don't like that we've got it here and you can still see everything. You can see that seam there. It's not very clean, very tidy. So we need to think of another way to resolve this, and we're going to be doing that right now. Okay, so the first thing we need to do to resolve this issue, this second method to fix this problem that we have with the chin and the seam issue there, is I need to create a new group. So let me create a new group here, and we're going to call it Fix Chin Mark 2. What I need to do is move this up here into there, into that group, so it's in that group now. What I need to do now as well is duplicate this one here, which is the AI, and put that at the top there. And I need to just delete this layer, and we're going to delete that as well. And then I need to use duplicate that, and then take this out of the layer. Delete that layer mask there, and delete and hide that one, right? So at the current, this is our bottom layer here, the AI diffuse map here. Then we've got our FaceGen texture here in a Fix Chin Mark 2 folder. And then we've got the AI diffuse copy here as well of it in the same folder, right? So it looks like this basically. It looks like that. So actually I need to move that up there as well. There you go. So it looks like this. So what we need to do now for this one here is we are going to use a mask. So inverted mask here. And I need to remove all of these for now. So I need to hide all of these for now as well, just to show you everything. And what we need to do now is we need to paint in the center of that face. So we just want to paint in the center here. And again, I'm going to go to my brush here, make sure it's a soft brush here, and put symmetry. Symmetry is already on, cool. And we're just going to paint in the center. And essentially what we're doing is we're just painting the FaceGen texture, just the middle portion here, right? We're going to make sure we don't go over the edges because we are going to be using the AI textures for this. So this will become very clear as I do this. So let me just go around and let me just go ahead and do this. I'll show you what I mean. Probably sounds a bit confusing. It's probably not that confusing. Okay, so we've actually gone too much there. So let me just bring that down a bit. I want more control here. A bit there, a little bit there. Okay. So as you can see here, we've kind of like painted on the face, right, in that center area. And what I want to make sure is removing this. So I need to use the opposite. Just want to kind of like remove that section there. There we go. And I want to make sure all these edges here are not painted on. So I'm just doing this. Probably don't need to do this, but I just want to make sure. And the reason why I'm doing this, remember, we're going to be using the AI textures instead of our FaceGen textures. So this is a possible fix, right? If you have that issue, this is a fix. This is a possible fix. So right now we need to use feathering as well. So let's feather that in so it blends in nicely. Something like that. It's fine. 22.2. Now at the moment the colors don't match. What we're going to do in this case with the AI diffuse is we're going to turn that on. And then I need to click on this and change the blending mode to color. So to color here. And then we're going to try and match it, right? So I'm going to use the opacity here and try and match the skin tone that way. So basically we're trying to blend in this with this skin tone here. That's good enough, I think. Yes, that seems to match with this. Now we've done that, what we need to do is we need to go through each of these groups here and we need to adjust. Why do we need to adjust? You'll see straight away. So if I turn on the fixed lips here, you will see that the color's all wrong and everything because that was for the FaceGen texture map and everything's changed now. So we need to go and adjust those. So I need to go and adjust each of these. All we need to do adjust now is the color, the skin tone. So I need to bring that down. Bring that down. And you may need to adjust the levels as well. So it's going to be something like that. Again, with the nose, we're gonna have to do the same. You're gonna see, it's very different, and we need to go through the colors for that. So I'm gonna go through this very quickly. Obviously, when you're doing it, take as much time as you need. There we go. And if I go up here, we do the eyes now, the eyelids rather. So remove the saturation as well, just to blend that in nicely, and the levels here. There we go. And the top section here, fix, although we don't need to worry about that because we are using the AI texture here. We're going to leave that as it is. That's fine. So that's what it's going to look like now. Eyebrows we don't have to worry about because the eyebrows are the same. We don't need to worry about that in terms of the changing of that. So there we go. That's what we needed to do, and you'll see why. So let me save this. I'm going to call it YS Face 2. And then let's save the, save it as a, then let's save it as a JPEG. File, save as JPEG, and we're going to call it 2 as well for that one. BM2. Right, so let's jump back into Daz Studio. Here we are. And now let's apply the AI textures, right? We need to apply the AI textures again because we're using that as the base. And so you can still see the mark there. If I just remove that there, you can still see the mark there, right? You can clearly see the issue there, and this is going to remove it now. So we won't be using the FaceGen textures. We're going to be using these textures, the AI textures, as our base, and we're only going to apply the face texture for the new one that we just created right now. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's apply this. Let's go to the surfaces tab here. So ears, control, eye socket, face, and the lips. Let's go to the base color here, and I'm going to click on YS3 face map BM1. So even though it's the wrong one, I'm going to click back on it again and click on browse. It's going to take me straight to that folder. So no messing about there. There we go. Let's do the translucency as well. There we go. And let's click off there. Let's do our NVIDIA iRay. There we go, right? That is fixed. So if you look at the front here of our camera, it's still the same texture for the kind of like middle part of the face here. Exactly the same texture. We go to the perspective view and we don't have that issue now with the skin. It's blended in very, very well. Very, very well blended. Much better than we had before. So that is the fix. If you ever have a texture from FaceGen where the artifacts are so close to the edge here like this, that is the method you can use to use the central portion of the face here. And then we use the feathering. So let's go back to the Photoshop file so we can have a look at that. All the way at the back here, Fix Chin Mark 2. So you can see we've used the FaceGen texture here. We go to the mask here. We just add the kind of like central bit here. And then we feather it. And then we use the color blend mode here. Reduce the opacity to match as best as you can. Yes, you could use hue saturation and you could use levels if you want to. Of course, that is another way to match or blend the colors. We could have done it that way, of course we could. And then we need to go through for each of these fixes that we did earlier to match the skin tone, right? To match the skin tone that we're using now, the blend mode, the color mode for this. So that's all done, and that's much better than what we had before here. So there we go, a lot better with that. Okay, fantastic. What we need to do now is fix the skin tone of this character. So let's go and have a look at our render settings. Let's go to environment and let's change it to scene only. Let's have a look at this issue here with the ears. There's a lot there in terms of how much light is coming through the ears. So I'm gonna go and fix that first. So let's click on skin here and then scroll down and make sure I do control and lips as well. Let's go all the way down in the shader here, and the issue we want to solve is this one here. I don't want to use SSS mono mode, I want to use chromatic, and I want to choose SSS color, which is going to be something like this, pink or something, which is kind of like the skin tone. So there. The SSS direction, I don't want positive, I like to use negative numbers, so we'll use negative 0.5. And let's resolve this. So the transmitted measurement distance is 0.5. I think we need to reduce the scattering measurement distance, so maybe something like 0.5. And then what we need to do, sorry, maybe like 0.05. And then the transmitted measurement distance, we can turn that to something like 0.1, I think. That looks a lot better there. So in terms of the light coming through the ears here, that's good enough. Maybe we could reduce the scattering measurement distance even more. So 0.01 maybe. Yes, that's probably too much actually. Let me just turn up the transmitting measurement distance. I'm thinking 0.5 might be good enough now. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. So that's pretty decent. We've improved it a little bit there. I think that's a lot better. So let's go back to our environment and just go to dome only. So now let's look at the skin tone. We need to match it. So if you have a look at the photo, this is the photo that I used for the FaceGen texture. Obviously this is a flashlight here, so the skin is very bright, but we're kind of looking like, as you can see here, there's a bit of a brown tone here, so we're looking for like a brownish kind of like skin tone, very light, but obviously the skin is very light as well. So let's reduce the, let's change the SSS reflectance tint here. Let's bring that down a bit. Let's use a bit of yellow, kind of reddish yellow color here to give that. That's probably too much there. Let's remove the translucency weight as well, and let's change the translucency color as well. That's the issue. So it probably shouldn't be too red. It should be something like brown here as well. There, okay, that looks a lot better. The SSS reflectance tint, I think we could bring that way down, probably make it a bit more green here, very low green here. Cool. Okay, so now it's starting to look a bit like that. Now it's not going to be an exact match. I'm not a master at doing the skin tone in terms of the color and everything, but we're going to do our best here. So I would say something like that is probably going to maybe 0.4, 0.5 maybe. And remember, we're taking the flash into consideration here as well. So that looks pretty accurate to me. Pretty good. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. I mean, we could move the, if I just minimize this, if we move the dome to kind of simulate this, then we could do that. So let me just move this across here. Let's bring that back up here to kind of simulate that. Yeah, that looks about right. Obviously, there's heavy brightness here, but that kind of simulates the look here. So that's pretty close. That's good enough. All right, one thing I haven't done is the eyes, so let's go and sort out the eyes. So in order to do the eyes, we need to go to our surfaces here, and let's go to, we need to click on irises, then click on pupils and the sclera. Let's go up here. So for the base color, we need to change that. So let's go over here, and we can click on the YS3 face here, which is obviously the wrong texture, but when I click back on here and go to browse, it would take me directly to that texture. So let me just minimize this. Let's go to this one here, and then scroll down to where it says translucency and add the same one here. There we go. Click back on our picture here so we can see the eyes. Let me zoom in a bit more. So the kind of color we want for the eyes is blue here. So the way to do that is we go to click on irises only, and I'm going to go to where it says base color effect. I'm going to choose scatter and transmit, and I'm going to change the reflectance tint here, which I find is a lot more efficient in terms of getting the nice color. So we kind of want this kind of bluish color here. So let's have a look if we can get that bluish color. Now, as I was practicing this tutorial, I felt something like this kind of blue, I think was correct. Something like that, I believe. Somewhere around there. There you go. That's pretty close. That's pretty close, right, to the blue, to that kind of blue. Have a look at the eyes. Look absolutely amazing, right? So even though that texture that we did in Photoshop looked horrendous, the eyes look very good. Even if I zoom in here, let's zoom into the eyes. I'll show you how good they are. There we go. Not bad, right? Not bad. Using the AI textures and then using that, we've done a very good job there. They look pretty good. Looks pretty good match in terms of the color there. Look very, very good. So I'm very happy with the eyes, and that's something you could definitely use if you want to, you know, change the texture of the eyes. You can certainly go ahead and do that, and with FaceGen, and get beautiful eyes. You can even do this. I wish I did this with Genesis 8 Male. Now the texture would have looked far superior, the eye color, to what we did in part 2. So very happy with that. So obviously what we need to do now is change the kind of like hair, right? Add the hair, because obviously it looks kind of strange here at the moment, and then maybe dress her up in some other kind of clothing, and then we would do our render, right, in terms of the lighting and thing. But that's done for Genesis 8. That's how you fix that problem we had for Genesis 8, where we had the issue with the chin. Okay, we're using the AI skin materials, and we're gonna use a portion of the center of that face, what we did with Photoshop, what we did inside Photoshop. So that's Genesis 8 done. Now let's have a look at Genesis 9 as well. Let's apply the settings to that so I can show you the difference with that as well. So here we are with Genesis 9 here, and before we even go any further with Genesis 9, because we're working with a female character, make sure you've turned on these settings here on the right. Base feminine body 100%, base feminine head 100%, and base feminine 100% as well, because we're working with a female character. Once you've done that, you need to go to shaping here, and again we need to go down here where it says head, expand that, go to FaceGen here, you'll see YS3, and then expand that as well. Now again, 100% very exaggerated I feel as well, so I'm going to dial this down a bit. So I'm going to go with the same as what we had before, which is around about 79%, 80% we had for Genesis 8 female. So let's do that as well. Now what I need to do is I need to apply the textures. But which textures do we apply? We don't apply the default textures. We apply the Olympia textures. So, because that is the base texture we use, remember. That is the base texture we use to create our FaceGen textures. So we got to use those materials for our characters. So let me go to my content library here. There's Olympia 9. Just going to double click this. And it's going to apply all the materials. This may take a while. Okay, so here's all the maps applied here, the texture maps here for Olympia 9. If we just do iRay preview, you can see that. There we go, that's Olympia 9. Obviously, that's not our character, so we need to address this right now. So what we need to do before we apply the textures for our FaceGen is we need to click on hip here first, and we need to control click on eyes here as well. Now this is only specifically when you're applying the FaceGen texture, otherwise it won't apply the eyes as well. It will just apply the textures to the skin, but it won't do it to the eyes. So now I need to scroll up to where my materials are. Here it is, FaceGen. Now remember, the great thing about Genesis 9 is when you create the textures and you create the morph and everything, it creates a one-click preset. So you just double-click that preset and it applies the textures. So I don't need to go to the surfaces tab here, go to the individual skin surfaces and then apply the textures manually. I don't need to do that. This one click will do it here. So I'm going to use YS3 because I'm not using the iRay adjusted textures. I'm using the non-iRay adjusted textures. Again, if you don't understand what I'm talking about in terms of iRay adjusted or non-iRay adjusted, part 1 of the tutorial for FaceGen has it all covered there for you. So that's why I highly recommend you go check that out. So double click this. There we go. It's added everything there. So before we even get started with this, what we need to do is you'll see that it's using the texture that came out of FaceGen, the original one, which is this. So we need to definitely go change that. So let's go and do that first. So let's go to surfaces here. Let's go to Genesis 9 here. Let's go to surfaces and I want to go to head here. So I want to click on the base color for the head. I'm going to go to browse here. It's going to take me directly to that folder here where the texture is, which is going to be head BM1, and I want to go and change the translucency as well. I believe it uses the same texture for that for some reason. So head BM1, there it is. Let's do our iRay preview. Let's go back to our main camera here, the front here. So there we go, that's our iRay preview there. So if you have a look here, we don't have that problem here with the chin. We fixed it, remember, earlier on for Genesis 9. And as you can see here, the texture for Genesis 9 is completely different in terms of where the seams are and everything. So that's why we don't have to do anything with Genesis 9. Genesis 9 is fine in terms of that chin problem that we had. It was just a straightforward fix. That's absolutely fine with there. So one thing we do need to do though, if you have a look at the eyes are the wrong eyes. So let's go back to camera 2 here, sorry. So the eyes are wrong, right? Why are the eyes wrong? Because it's using these eyes here. So if I go to here, it's using these eyes here for the texture. This one here. This is the one that came out. These are the non-iRay adjusted eyes. Now, I've talked about this in part 1 of the tutorial. I'll talk about this very briefly now though. When you do non-iRay adjusted to get the textures for Genesis 9, you won't get the same color of the eyes all the time. For some reason it doesn't do that. But when you use iRay adjusted and get the textures, then you'll get the right color of the eyes coming out. So you'll get blue, green, or whatever the eyes of that photo is that you've used. It'll be much more accurate. So that's one thing to notice. So we need to change the eyes, obviously. So if I go click on my Genesis 9 character, go to where it's, I need to go to the eyes here. So eyes here, eye left, and click on eye left and eye right here. So control click, highlight them two, and then I need to go and change the base color for that. So I need to go to browse here. It's going to take me to the folder here. I'm going to click off, I'm going to go to Genesis 9 here, YS3 eye array, which is the eye array adjusted, and I just want the eyes, right? I just want the eyes, and I need to do the same for translucency color as well. So it's going to be over here somewhere, YS3 eyes, which is going to be, it's not there. Go to browse, let me go back to our folder here, textures, FaceGen, Genesis 9, YS3 eye array, because I want to use these eyes here. There we go. Beautiful blue eyes here. There we go. Not bad. So let's have a look at the skin. So let me pull up that image there. So skin's pretty accurate. With the flash here, it's a bit difficult to tell here. So I think we still need a bit of like brown here maybe. So let's go to our surfaces tab here. Let's go to our skin here, click on skin here. Let's have a look at the texture here. Actually, before we do that, let's go to our render settings here. Let's go and do our scene only. Have a look behind here so you can see how much light is coming through the ears. I don't need to worry about this. Genesis 9 has very good subsurface scattering here, as well as with the amount of light coming through. Remember, light always comes through the thin part of your ears more than anywhere else. Even with a very strong backlight, it would always look like that. Every time I look at programs now and you see like a dark scene and there's like a very bright backlight, you'll see the back of the ears here where the thin parts are, the light will come through. I keep seeing that now. So once you kind of like sometimes see something, you can never unsee it, which is very strange. So all these things you pick up as you're learning on your journey, and then you're watching a program, you're like, hey, there's that thing that I learned earlier on. Oh, there it is. And it's one of those things, right? You don't know what you don't know. So once you learn something, you'll see everywhere. It becomes like, your brain just becomes more aware of things. So that's fine. Don't need to worry about that. Let's go to DOM only here. So, one of the things I have noticed here is we're using the fiber cards here. So I want to remove the eyebrows here. So hide that. We're not using that, right? We're going to use the eyelashes from the face texture here. That looks pretty good, right? I'm quite impressed with that. Look at that. Wow. The eyes look, the eyelashes here, not the eyelashes, the eyebrows looks absolutely amazing. Okay, that's quite interesting there. I'm quite surprised at that. So that looks pretty cool. All right, let's look at the skin tone. So what did I want to do with skin tone? That looks fine there. I don't need to worry about these here. Let's go to the top here and let's have a look at the skin here. So we could have a look at the translucency weight. Let's bring that down maybe. So it looks a bit more like this. With the flash on, it's a bit difficult to tell, but that looks a bit more accurate. So what do we move down to? 0.78 is very small movement. Let's look at the translucency color here. So I believe for Genesis 8 we use a slightly browner kind of tinge here. What does that do there? Okay, so it's made it a bit more redder there. I mean, there's not much to do really with the skin. It's pretty good. That's the kind of benefit with Genesis 9 here. The skin tone, the skin you get is very, very good. So let's bring that down as well. 0.7 say, let's push it a bit. 0.7 is a lot more lighter skin tone here. So I actually want to just put that back to 0.75. I think that's good enough. I could even go to the base color here and possibly change that. So let's try that, right? I want to get this slight brown color, like where there's a bit of suntan, right? So let's try this slightly brown. Small. I mean, let's click on one of these presets here and then kind of like bring it. I don't think that's going to work. I think that's going to be too much. That is going to be too much, isn't it? Yes, I thought it would be. Let's undo that. So I want to be very subtle with the base colors. So what I want to do here is probably something like that, I think. Okay, that's too much. Let's bring down the saturation here. Let's bring it down to 30 something. Yeah, we get a bit more kind of brown skin tone here, a bit more reddish here. So let's bring this down to 0.665, shall we say? Yeah, that looks, even with the kind of like really bad lighting we've got in here at the moment, it looks a bit like that now. It looks a bit like this in terms of the overexposure here. We got the overexposure here with the lighting, so that's a bit more accurate there. So that's our skin texture fix there. Again, we need to add the hair because it looks a bit strange. We might need to change the FaceGen dials in terms of dialing that morph up or less a bit more, but that for likeness, that's pretty good likeness there. I'm pretty happy with that. So now what I'm going to do is take a render of the first Genesis 8 female render and then do a render of Genesis 9 and show you the differences between the face morphs, because obviously they're very, very different. And we're going to do that right now. So here are our renders here from Daz Studio. On the left we have Genesis 8 female here. On the right we have Genesis 9 female here. In the middle we have the render settings. For those of you that want to know my render settings, pardon me, what render settings do you use? Here they are in the middle. Nothing fantastical, right? You can have a look at them, you can criticize them, whatever you want to do. These are the kind of like general render settings I use anyway. So that's what we use to create the renders for these two images here. Now you might be wondering about the lighting. You're probably thinking, well, why is this one more brighter than this one here? Even though I've used the same lighting, I assure you it is the same lighting. Now my conclusion is because the height difference. So because we're using the default dome inside Daz Studio, the default dome that comes with Daz Studio, the height difference between Genesis 8 female character and the height difference between Genesis 9 female character, there is a bit of a difference with the height. And I believe that's why this one looks a bit darker at the top here and this one looks a bit brighter here. So that's the reason why it looks like this. So we can see the shapes here, the FaceGen shapes here. You may prefer the one on the left or you may prefer the one on the right. In this case, I prefer the one on the right. I think the one on the right is a bit more accurate to our original FaceGen image that we use, the photo that we use for this character. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with this. I'm very happy with the eyes as well. Look at the eyes here. They look absolutely amazing for Genesis 8. So even when we had that texture in Genesis 8 for the eyes, it looked absolutely horrible. But look at how decent it looks here, right? It looks very, very good in terms of how the outcome was for that. And the skin tones, pretty good as well in terms of what we were trying to create with just what we were working with inside Daz Studio. So that's part 3 of the FaceGen tutorial complete there. I've gone through a lot here with you here. This is very long tutorials, but I've gone through a lot here. Hopefully that's going to help you if you decide to use FaceGen. You've got a pretty comprehensive tutorial here going through part 1, part 2 and part 3. That's going to help you to fix the problems with FaceGen textures when you export them and what you can do with those FaceGen textures. So that's going to help you there. Remember, all the files that I've got for the Photoshop files, the textures here for Genesis 8 and Genesis 9, I'm going to share that with you as well. Link in the description down below as well. So you'll get the Photoshop files, you'll get the texture files, you'll even get the morph files as well. And I'll explain how to add those as well. I'll leave a little file there that you can read that shows you how to add the morph so you can use them as well. So if you want to have a look at this as well, you can do that as well. If you like the video, make sure you hit the like button. Also, don't forget to leave a comment down below as well. And also don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out any more great content like this. It's going to help you on a journey with Daz Studio. All these tutorials are going to help you in some way to improve, to get better. That's what I'm here to do, to help you to get better with Daz Studio. Now, if you're interested in a superhero story that's going to entertain you, empower you, and inspire you, look no further than Tiger Dragon The Rebirth. This is a story that I've created using Daz Studio. Took me 2 years to create, put my heart and soul into it, because I want to read superhero stories that entertain me, empower me, and inspire me. That's what I want to read. So link in the description down below for the Kickstarter campaign when that goes live in 2024. So if you click on the link in the description down below, get notified so you don't miss out when this campaign goes live. If you know anybody who loves superhero stories, right, they're looking for a new superhero story. There's not many great ones around, as we all know, and you want to help them out, send that link their way. They may be interested in that. I would appreciate that a lot. That would be absolutely amazing. And until the next video, always be learning.